All right, hello LinkedIn. I am here today with Konstantin Konstantinovsky, the Director of Intelligent Automation at Kpmg, and we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and how you're not a robot after all. So thank you for those that are tuning in, and I'd like to introduce you to Konstantin here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Kate. It's great to be here. Hi, everyone. So I'm Konstantin, and I've been with Kpmg for just over 4 years. I've spent a number of years in the industry, kind of working for a number of various investment banks, kind of working in technology and technical roles in the beginning of my career, and then ultimately kind of progressing into the business side of things. And at the end at Kpmg found a really good sweet spot kind of where I'm able to combine my technical expertise and the business knowledge to really address client problems. So that's
yes,
me.
That's actually, so the way I met Konstantin was he was a client of mine at Deutsche, he was at Deutsche Bank, I was at Deloitte, and yep, that was probably 6 years ago or so.
So a long time ago.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's been
absolutely.
a while. So I see a couple people have joined so far. Michael Ivy says, I know that guy. Oh,
Hi, Michael.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining, Michael. I see a bunch of other folks joined. Basically, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. He is the expert in this space, so feel free to shoot the most difficult questions his way, and I'll make sure to convey that. But before that, I do have a couple of things that I'd like to start asking you, and then as questions come in,
Sure.
I'd love to ask you those as well. All right. So, how did you get into this field? Tell us a little bit more of how you got started. I know you gave us a little brief intro of what your background
so
was.
I can definitely add a little bit to that. So as I mentioned, I started in a technical role. I was in computer programming, and
like Python or?
This is way before Python. So
C++,
this is
I don't know. Cobalt,
so
was that it?
to give away my age. So I started programming in Clipper, and then moved
Clipper? I'll Google
Clipper,
that later.
yeah.
Okay.
and then onto Java before Java could actually print. So this
Okay.
is before Java 1.0. And very quickly I found myself getting, I guess, very much removed from the business. And that's definitely not something that I wanted to do. My interest always lied on the business side of things. My degree is in finance, so my MBA is in finance. And I always wanted to focus on solving business problems. Being in a very, very technical role, it felt removed from the business. And so I kept looking for a job that actually allowed me to combine my technical expertise with the interest of working on solving business problems. So that's how I ended up ultimately at Goldman. I spent some time at Deutsche Bank, a number of other companies. Now at Kpmg, interestingly enough, me getting involved in artificial intelligence was a pure luck, so to speak. I was wrapping up a project at a client where we were doing some compliance work, and I started looking for the next engagement. Reached out to some of the people I knew and found out that there is an opportunity to lead our Audit cognitive program for US, where we were developing a number of artificial intelligence solutions. And it was just an amazing opportunity, one that I could not pass up, and that's where I am, and that was about 3.5 years ago.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm sure you've seen it all, so we'll talk through all of that. But before we get way into it, let's just define AI. What is artificial intelligence?
So I think, there are many definitions, and if you Google it, you can probably find dozens upon dozens of different definitions. I think ultimately, kind of my take on it is that AI is really a practice of using kind of advanced analytics techniques to teach computers to simulate human thinking, to find patterns. Ultimately, I would guess the easiest way to think about it is that artificial intelligence system or cognitive system, or however you want to call it, needs to have 3 components. It has to be able to perceive information. So think of self-driving cars with cameras. They have to be able to see what's going on the road. They have to be able to reason. So it's not enough just to perceive the information, but you actually have to make some decisions based off of it and reason over the data that you've ingested. And you have to be able to learn. So it's not enough to build a system that's based on a fixed set of rules or a fixed set of algorithms. It has to be continuously learning and evolving. And I think if you have those 3 components, that ultimately allows you to build a cognitive system that has components of artificial intelligence, allows you to perceive, reason, and learn, and ultimately simulate human thinking.
All right, thank you. And then, so Gaurav here asks, what's a significant difference between something like machine learning and AI? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think machine learning is really a component of artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Machine learning is a technique that you use to train up the AI system to perform certain things. So you build up an algorithm in a machine learning algorithm to find certain patterns in data, and that ultimately is how you build an artificial intelligence solution.
Mm-hmm.
There are other techniques. So, for example, there are tools out there that so natural language processing, NLP, for example, you can have NLP that's based off of machine learning techniques, or you can have rules-based NLP. Both of those are part of artificial intelligence, but just different approach to doing things.
Okay, cool. So you're at Kpmg. Can you talk a little bit about how Kpmg tries to use artificial intelligence, and have you guys been effective at it?
Yeah, so I think we definitely try to, and to steal a phrase from one of the partners that I work with, we sort of weed our own dog food, so to speak.
Yeah.
We so not only do we work with a number of clients, of course, building
Is
out.
that what we had for lunch?
I hope not. But so not only do we work with various clients building out different artificial intelligence solutions, but of course we employ some of the same techniques internally as well. So in fact, that's how I got involved in AI within Kpmg, and I was working for our audit practice, where I was leading a number of artificial intelligence projects that we're running for the audit practice. So we've certainly, I think there are pockets across the firm where AI is being adopted throughout the organization in various areas. It's one of these solutions that's probably it's not a silver bullet, so it doesn't solve everything. But in a number of different areas, such as audit, we've done some advisory projects, certainly in tax as well. We've built out a number of solutions in tax. So there are definitely areas where we've been really successful implementing that technology.
Okay, great. So Sherwan asks, how is AI used for audit, since you started in that group?
Sure. Many different ways. So I'll give you one example. And the simplest example probably is reading and ingesting documents. So as part of an audit, so there's one of the new regulations is revenue recognition rules changes that are coming up. I think they're coming in effective in June of this year, maybe July. But ultimately, the rules change around how you treat revenue from contracts. Now, when a firm such as Kpmg or any other audit firm audits a client, they have to read a number of contracts, and of course, or contracts for many different document types, and they have to validate that the processes and procedures have been properly applied to those contracts. Now, one way that AI can help is by reading those contracts for you and extracting the information that you actually need. So that ultimately saves the time of a human being or a professional reading those documents, and allows them to focus on actually kind of value-added decisions, like what does it all mean, versus spending hours reading mindless documents.
Right, so how accurate is that? I mean, if contracts obviously, like you said, come in different shapes, sizes, styles, types, so if I send you a picture of a PDF, is it able to read that?
So yes and no. So I think, this gets, it's an interesting topic. So I think, it's funny you should pick a picture in a PDF. I bet you've probably faced that challenge
I've seen pictures
before.
Of PDFs, so that's
PDFs, not all PDFs are created equal, of course. So some PDFs have really nice text in them, other PDFs have pictures embedded. So the very first step is that invariably you have to process that PDF through OCR if it has pictures. So optical character recognition, which essentially means is that you take the picture of the text and you convert it into actual text that's usable by a computer. And after that, I think depending on what you're dealing with, we've certainly had really good success rate in being able to process various document types. Now, that's not to say that there is a magic system that can actually ingest every single document type and produce exceptional results. That's
Right.
not the case. In fact, artificial intelligence systems can never be 100% accurate. It's just mathematical impossibility. It's just the way that they're built. You can try to approach accuracy of 100%, but you can never reach it. So ultimately, when a new contract type is introduced, if it's really, really different from what the system has ever seen before, there is probably a little bit of work to retrain the model.
Okay.
But yeah, you can certainly accommodate the variances there.
I'm sure it still adds a lot of time back to people and efficiency, even if 85% of the documents are processed, and then you just have a handful of things to look
So
at.
to give you, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of our processes with an audit, prior to this type of automation, would take an audit professional about 6 hours,
Yeah.
and we went down to approximately 2 hours with introducing this type of technology. So absolutely, I think the potential is there to revolutionize, and it's happening now. It's not just, I shouldn't say the potential is there.
Yeah.
I think industries are being revolutionized now by this type of technology.
So I think people are really liking this topic. There are a lot of questions that have come in.
Hopefully only the easy ones.
Only the easy ones, yes. So Shardul asks, is AI able to adapt to changes done in the contracts to save manpower over time? So basically, you know, contracts have little updates once in a while. Is it able to adapt to process those types of changes?
So I think, as the contract paper that are written on some
Yeah.
terms that are changing over time, so yes, absolutely. But that brings, so this is a big topic because that brings another challenge into the picture, right? So how do you avoid bias?
Yeah.
So artificial intelligence systems, because they do adapt, and the change is gradual in the contract, and over time, kind of new clause gets introduced, it gets put into the model, and the model ultimately gets updated to accommodate the changes. So that's fine, that's a good change. There are oftentimes bad changes where the system gets, statistical systems have a tendency to drift, or they have the potential for bias being introduced. So if they're actually being trained by bad data, they may potentially bias towards that bad data set, and that will produce bad answers. So as your system learns over time, you have to put certain measures and controls in place to make sure that your system is constantly checked to avoid bias. And there are different offerings for that as well. So there are solutions that can help, and we have a few at Kpmg as well.
So you can't set it and forget it. Got it. You have to keep
Definitely
on it.
not. No, it's
not
not.
like a chicken. Got
No.
it. All right, so as with all great things that help us do our job quicker and better, there are definitely roadblocks and challenges, right? So if you could talk about maybe some of the challenges that KPMG has had in terms of implementing effective AI, as well as some of your clients, that would be great.
Yeah, so I think I would say there are probably two major challenges that I've seen both at KPMG and at our clients, right? I think both are pretty common. So the first one is having access to data. And obviously this is very old. This is a very old statement. It has nothing to do with AI, but garbage in, garbage out. It's always been true. It's absolutely true now with artificial intelligence systems. So you need to have, not only do you need to have good data, you have to be aware of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and make sure you actually have enough data to make it happen. Because if you want to go into an area of things like image recognition or unsupervised learning, where you're actually letting computer learn by itself instead of a human training that system, you better have lots and lots of data, right? And that's why companies such as Google, Facebook, Amazon, that's where they're able to be really, really successful in that space, because they have access to unlimited data. Certainly my clients at KPMG, we have a lot of data, but it's not unlimited. And there's, so we tend to be more on the side of kind of supervised learning, where we have a human in the loop that trains, and majority of our clients do the same thing, where they have humans training the system. So the first step and the first challenge, I would say, is get your data clean. Make sure.
Well, first get your data, right?
Get your data.
Then get your data clean.
Make sure you have your data. Make sure you know what you're trying to accomplish. What is the end goal? Make sure that you actually have the right techniques that match the data that you have, because depending on whether you're dealing with small data or big data, you would use different tools for those in those situations. And run some proofs of concept or play around with it in the beginning just to make sure, kind of test your hypothesis, so to speak, to make sure that your data is good. I've seen a number of projects, including, unfortunately, I'll be completely transparent about that. We've had cases at Kpmg as well where we started projects and then we realized the data was really, really hard to get. The projects were still successful, but it was a real challenge getting that data. And another challenge, I would say, is that you have to have I think your expectations have to be in line with this new artificial intelligence paradigm.
Really low is what you're saying. Lower your
No,
expectations.
different. It's fine for them to be high. They just have to be different from the expectations that you would have of a more kind of older type system that's rules-based, kind of old school kind of style, where you build a computer program, you know exactly what it's going to do. If your requirements are good, if your developers are good, if you know what users want, you deliver a finished product.
Right.
So the expectation, typically, and I've been in software space and software development for many years, and the expectation of the end user is that when they get your final product, whatever system you're releasing, it works.
Right.
And it's 100% perfect. Yes, there may be some bugs, but ultimately, they get what they asked for.
Yeah.
With artificial intelligence, things are a little bit different. You have to be careful to set your goals, not to focus so much on the performance of day one, because you can't, AI system on day one is not going to be fully trained up. Your models will not be fully trained up. Going back to that contracts example, right? On day one, you may be able to support 2-3 different contract types, but you might be dealing with 50 different contract types. So you have to manage your expectations, and it's important for folks to realize that AI systems take time to be trained. Users themselves very often get involved in the training process as they use the system. These systems get smarter and smarter over time. So ultimately, I would say the key is not to achieve a specific this perfection on day one of release, but to achieve what I would call learning trajectory. You have to build a system that's really user-friendly, that has the ability to learn, and puts it on a path of this trajectory where the models are going to be trained up very effectively and very quickly by their users.
Okay, so lots of challenges. Thank you.
Yeah.
Before I go on to my next question, just if you're just tuning in, we're talking about artificial intelligence with Konstantin Konstantinovsky. He's the director of Kpmg, and if you do have questions on AI, feel free to go ahead and type those in. So you wrote an article on LinkedIn a few months ago called "You're Not a Robot After All," and in that article you mentioned there are some similarities in terms of raising a child, a human child, and raising a system. So can you just explain the comparison? I mean, I have kids, you have a kid, so how is it similar?
So I think I'll give you kind of from my experience with what I faced. I've done quite a bit of work with IBM Watson, and what we used to say very often was that on day one, kind of when we executed a contract with IBM, when we brought in Watson technology in-house, what we got was baby Watson. It could
like a little fetus, a little Watson
so to
fetus.
speak, right?
Yes.
It was a phenomenal piece of technology, of course, really, really powerful. It could understand language, right? It could read English language. It could certainly do a number of things. It could find an address in a document really easily.
Yeah.
But it couldn't do much else, right? So at that point, we took on, the entire project was actually, and it lasted for quite a bit of time, was to train Watson, to train this baby Watson,
to raise
him, exactly. To start getting him to read from 5th grade level to maybe 10th grade level, and to understand more business terms, and to be able to find things that are much more intricate than just an address of somebody, but how do you find litigation clauses in the contract and things of that nature. So, and I think that applies to probably not all, I don't want to go global, but nearly all artificial intelligence systems that have a learning process in them. They need to grow and be taught.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, my kids are exactly the same. They're reading at a pre-K level.
There you go.
It's embarrassing. So, let's say you're at a client or in your own company, you know, there are employees, there are people that might not be as pro technology or innovation as others. How do you deal with those people? Do you train them? Do you explain benefits? Kind of, how do you address that issue?
So, I think the easiest way, or I would say maybe not the easiest, but the most powerful way to do it is to get them involved. Artificial intelligence, for better or for worse, has a lot of hype associated with it. Not all of it is positive. There are definitely some dystopian views how, you know, robots are going to take over the world and
No, they are, no? I thought they are.
Absolutely, but don't tell anyone. So,
secret, yeah.
But and I think so. There are a lot of fears that are surrounding this topic, and I think it's perfectly reasonable for a lot of people to be concerned for their jobs, right? It is a fact that these systems are beginning to take on more and more tasks every day.
Mm-hmm.
So the way, so it's expected that not everyone's going to be welcoming of this technology. Not everyone is going to be supportive of it. Not everyone's going to understand what's actually happening in the organization. And the best way to do it is to get, the best way to address it is really to get people involved, to inform them of what's going on. We worked with a number of clients where we helped them to communicate to their employees, put together communications plans.
So are these like emails or workshops or?
It's a little bit of both. So I think it could be, and it varies by the size of the organization, the resources, and the scale of change, right? But you can run workshops. We often facilitate what we call hackathons for our clients, where we can actually get people who may not be very technical into a room and start playing around with some of these technologies that are now accessible by folks who don't necessarily have a PhD in data science, right? So it could be emails, newsletters, workshops, hackathons. It's important for the message to trickle down from the top of the organization. I think it's important for the entire organization to be bought into this. It's really difficult, and it's a hard path. That's for maybe one group or one department to all of a sudden decide, you know what, we're going to start implementing some AI tools or similar technology, whereas the rest of the organization may not be bought into this, right? So I certainly wouldn't advise that. But you need to have the buy-in throughout the organization, and then I think employees will, once they're involved, maybe solicit them for ideas, right? For run an innovation challenge of sorts.
I've seen
right?
those. I've seen those with my clients.
Absolutely.
Those are cool.
Yep, and get people involved and educate them. A lot of this, a lot of the fear is really, a lot of the fear stems from the unknown. People don't understand. Not everyone understands what artificial intelligence is. They don't understand. Even people, I think people who understand what it is sometimes have trouble grasping exactly what the impact of that is going to be to an organization. So I think just education and getting people involved.
So is AI for everyone? So I used to, before all my risk management and data world, I worked at a bagel store, I worked at a restaurant. Can they implement AI? Like, is there a limit? Don't laugh at me.
Well,
is there a limit? You know, can all companies benefit from that is the question.
So I think all companies can, maybe not every single use case, but you know, because there is Watson mixes drinks now. So there's a.
So they could it make coffee instead of these? What you're saying? Probably better.
There is a Watson mixologist actually that was built. So
wait,
AI.
I had one of those on a cruise ship that made Royal Caribbean. Seriously, they made there was a bar with robots and they make you drinks. You just use
based on your preference, like you just.
No, you just tell them which one you want, then they mix it for you. Take a little hand.
But this can actually create its own drinks.
Yeah, that one didn't do it.
There you go.
It was just a lot of sugar. It was not.
So maybe a bagel shop can do something like that and create a new type of bagel.
Like everything raisin bagels, yeah.
There you go. So I think, I think any company can certainly use it.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be applied to every use case. And what I mean by that is, like I mentioned before, it's not a silver bullet. Artificial intelligence is cool. It's really powerful. Everyone's talking about it. It can do a lot, but it doesn't do everything. If you need an exact answer that has to be always accurate, and you have to have in certain cases, like if you're dealing with life-saving equipment or things of that nature,
Right.
or medicines, where you have to know with 100% certainty that the answer you're getting is correct. Well, AI may not be the right choice for
Or
you.
it may be the right choice, because in some cases I think AI is, smarter than humans.
Possibly,
We make
but
mistakes.
Humans
I
do
make
make
mistakes all the time.
Absolutely.
I see a typo in your paper, you make mistakes.
That's not a typo. That's just how I spell it. So.
Anyways, all right. So it's not every use case, but most companies can probably benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. They just have to. You have to spend some time figuring out is the use case the right one for artificial intelligence, or maybe you should be doing something like robotic process automation, or just build a very specific targeted solution for something that you're trying to do, and not just unnecessarily jump in the bandwagon of AI.
Are there specific processes or something that a company should have in place before they even think to introduce AI?
Yeah, so I think absolutely, and we touched on that a little bit before as well. I think the very first thing that the company needs to have is data and handle on their data.
Yeah.
I can't repeat that often enough, so I'm glad we're talking about it again, because it's at the core of what you're trying to do, right? The AI, based on what we talked about, the definition of AI is being able to ingest data and looking for patterns in that data. If you don't have it, if you don't have a good grasp on that data, if you're not sure what your data actually means, then I think you have a really, really tough road ahead of you in terms of building out an AI system. So that's certainly number one. So, and probably the most important thing, I would say.
Okay. Before we get into more questions, there have been a lot of comments and questions about working for Kpmg. Are you guys hiring, especially in the field of machine learning and AI, and where can people go to find out more?
So, yes, we're definitely, so I don't know specifically so which roles we're hiring for right now, but we absolutely are hiring. If you go to kpmg.com, we do post all of our open roles online. So I absolutely encourage you to take a look at it, apply. I think it's a phenomenal place to work, so I would definitely encourage you to take a look at it. If you have any specific questions, feel free to message me on LinkedIn. I'll do my best to answer those.
Yeah, you should all message him. He's very nice. He's very responsive. Everyone who's joined us, please message him. All right, let's talk about vendors. Are there specific vendors that you want to give shout outs to that are just doing an incredible job when it comes to AI or cognitive technologies?
So nobody specifically. So I think we certainly work with a number of different vendors that I would say all phenomenal in various areas. It's one of those things where several years ago you probably had you had IBM Watson, Google, Microsoft, and that was it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there are a few others, of course, but landscape is changing. There are now still those big guys, and all of those are phenomenal. I mean, we at Kpmg work with all of those, all three of those, and others. But also, the space now has a lot of smaller companies that are kind of more niche players that are coming into the play, and some of them are really good as well. So I think the space is definitely changing. It's getting a lot stronger. The capabilities across all top vendors have gotten extremely better from just a year to even a year ago. So yeah, I think across the board right now, the strength in AI vendors is there. So I think any problem that you actually have, and if you believe you need to solve it with artificial intelligence, I think you can definitely find a good vendor out there that will solve the problem. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Russell Willis says AI is less prone to human error, but is entirely dependent upon learning training models, which is created or influenced by humans and can be inadvertently influenced, error and bias, by those responsible for this model. So, sounds more like a comment than a question. I tend to agree that yes, this goes into the whole bias and
yeah, I think ultimately, because so AI in its simplest, let's take machine learning. Machine learning in its simplest form, right, looks for patterns. you can obviously, and then it makes decisions based on those patterns, based on the data, patterns that it sees in the data. The data that's fed into the system can certainly be, it can be modified or intentionally or unintentionally to make the system, to create bias in the system, and then for the system to learn patterns that actually shouldn't be there, that create bias.
Right.
So absolutely, it's a serious issue in the industry. We have an initiative at Kpmg that attempts to tackle that right now. So we're working with, we're introducing that to a number of our clients now. The entire framework for how we can keep models from kind of addressing model drift, bias, and a number of other things. So it's a serious issue and definitely not one to be underestimated. So you have to have a plan in place of how you're going to deal with making sure that you take out bias out of the models before you really build, maybe not before you build them, but certainly before you rely on the results from those models.
Okay. And kind of on that same point, but also going back to the recruitment at KPMG, Sampurna asks, does KPMG do recruitment based on AI?
I don't know, to be honest. So that's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm not involved directly. I recruit people,
Right.
I interview people, but I'm not part of our HR group, so I don't know what kind of tools they're using. It's a really interesting question.
I would think likely, right? Some form of machine learning.
Oh no, but there are tools out there for sure. We're working with a couple of vendors that do have offerings out there in that space that do apply artificial intelligence to kind of scanning through resumes, to making sure, to trying to help the candidate match up the job to their skills, and at the same time helping recruiting manager find the right individual. And also, interestingly enough, it focuses on taking the bias out of the equation.
Well,
Because
I was going to argue it the opposite way, because it's a great example that I usually use for, talking to people about bias and ethics and how AI can mess up people's chances at getting a job, because it could be trained on some specific roles, right? Let's say historically you've only hired a specific type of people, and they've been successful, so your system starts to think that these individuals or that have these attributes are probably better at this job just because historically they've done so. So I think it also could be a candidate for bias.
So a couple of things to that. So this is an interesting
Ready
one
to
because
fight?
I've
Let's
looked
do it.
totally ready to fight. So I think this goes back to data.
Yeah.
So if your sample is one company,
Mm-hmm.
you're absolutely going to create some bias,
Yeah.
without a doubt. Now, arguably, I would potentially argue that that bias was created by human hiring managers
Yeah.
in the first place, because somebody was hiring people with similar qualifications,
Mhm.
right, to create a data set of very similar employees. And I think all of us have certain biases. They're, unintentionally, right? That it's entirely possible that someone may be an MIT graduate, right? And they're
Yeah.
leaning, not consciously, but they may have a subconscious preference to hiring from Ivy schools.
Mm-hmm.
They may not even know they have that bias, right?
Right.
So if you're looking at one company, you have the potential to create that bias. But now the trick here is to expand this to a universe of companies. So if you can actually span the data across multitude of companies and look at success factors in a multitude of companies, then you may actually have enough data, and probably will have enough data, to take the bias out of the equation. Because company A may be hiring more Ivy League schools, company B may be hiring less Ivy League, but as long as you have the same success criteria, you might actually balance those two out, and the machine learning will learn that, both of those types of individuals are equally successful in the end,
Mm-hmm.
and will be able to propose a candidate.
So you think it would be more fair to use, let's say, a resume, like application reading tool versus a human looking at?
I don't know, I
Resume.
think is the right answer. I don't know. It's a topic to discuss, to debate. I think there are pluses and minuses. I myself.
No, I agree with that. I don't think there is.
I don't think there is a clear answer. I myself, being in this field, like if I was to ever look for a job, I'm a little bit wary of my resume, never making it in front of a human being, and just a machine reading it and making
Well,
a
that's
decision.
very likely that it will go to a machine first, and
It's very likely. So even though I fully understand how technology works, so I think this touches upon a number of other issues, and I know, Kate, you had a video about ethics in AI. I think that's also a big topic that needs to be addressed. But so yeah, I don't know if there's a clear-cut answer to this. There are arguments for and against.
all right, let's move on. Okay, so where does technology go from here? Basically, where is the future of AI? And then while you discuss that, a few people have asked questions similar to this, where they're wondering if once all the programs are written and codes are written and everything is built, is there a need for data scientists or artificial intelligence experts, or do we all just like go away?
Oh, absolutely, there's a need. Yeah.
Okay.
No, definitely data scientists are never going away. I mean, look, well, you can say, right, I mean, COBOL programmers of, 30 years ago, I guess, I don't know, something like that, maybe. Have they gone away? Yeah, COBOL may have largely gone away, but computer programmers have not.
Mm-hmm.
So data scientists will not be going away. I think the tools that they're using are going to evolve. I'm sure 10 years from now, they're going to be using tools that haven't even been invented yet, haven't been thought of just yet. But is that the need for those individuals going to go away? Absolutely not. We're creating one of the pluses and minuses in some ways. One of the things of using these advanced techniques and using AI, using predictive analytics, using data and analytics tools, one of the downsides is that we constantly create more and more data.
Mm-hmm.
We're
and that's
in
a
the world,
downside? Wait, you said
so,
we need data.
Well, but the downside is that we're beginning to drown in data. So you need better tools to manage the large amounts of data, and ultimately that creates a need for more data scientists. So it's a challenge that's something we solve. The better we get at AI, the more data we create, and it's this vicious circle. Also, our society is changing. I think one of the statistics I remember, and it's probably 2 years. It's 2 years old at this point, but in 1 minute, about 2 years ago, 44 million WhatsApp messages were being sent. I don't know what the number is today.
I think I sent about 1 million of those.
There you go. So I don't know what the number is now. I bet it's over 100 million or something. But so the data explosion is just going to necessitate the need for data scientists.
Well, plus sensors, right?
Forever.
We have sensors everywhere now, which is tracking data of your every movement or every movement of everything.
That's
and
right.
IoT and all that stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of that leads us into what happens to your prior question, Kate. Kind of what happens next. So I think one of the, I guess I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball that can predict the future, unfortunately.
Oh, I have one. Hold on.
There you go. So I do think one of the things that's going to happen is that these types of more advanced technologies are going to become more ubiquitous.
Yeah.
They're going to become more accessible. Right now, you can log on to Microsoft, IBM, Watson, Google, and you can start playing with very, very advanced AI tools. The same tools that our data scientists at Kpmg use every day. You can go and download Python compiler, right? It's completely free. So it's all accessible. Certain things are still not that user-friendly. You have to have some technical background. But every single day they're becoming more and more user-friendly. So I do think, one analogy I would draw is like Microsoft Excel. Right?
Yeah.
I think at this point everyone knows how to use it, everyone has access to it.
Yeah.
It's very straightforward. We may not get quite to that level, but I think AI is definitely moving in that direction, where the tools are going to be available to more and more people, and they're going to be easily accessible by a larger
easier
variety
to use,
of
right?
people.
So
And much
you don't
easier.
have to code as much anymore.
Much
you just
easier
have
to use. That's happening now. I mean, the same tools we use today from the versions we used a year ago are just completely different. It's just so much easier.
Right. Actually, Angelica is adding that shouldn't AI also help to manage all that data that's exploding that you described?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, yes, I'm working with a colleague of mine, Kpmg. We're working on a white paper on that topic a little bit as well, kind of data analytics and AI and how those two work together. So stay tuned for that.
Yes, everybody stay tuned. Well, I think this is a good stopping point. So I would like to thank Konstantin for making the time to go live with me today. I recommend you follow him or add a connection or message all of your questions on AI directly to him. He loves it.
I'm sure there's a limit on LinkedIn.
There might not be a limit. No, let's try to break LinkedIn. But no, seriously, thank you so much for your time. This is
Pleasure
really
to be here.
helpful.
Thank you.
There are a lot of questions we didn't get to, so if you have time to answer a couple over the next few days.
Yeah,
you know.
you should. I'll
would be
attempt to
great.
answer as many as I can.
All right, great. Thank you again. And
Thanks,
bye,
Kate.
everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, everyone.